And welcome back. I'm Teresa Wiedrich from CapturingTheCharmLife.com, and I'm here to help you turn your homeschool challenges into your homeschool charms. Notice anything different about me? I'm wearing contacts. I've been wearing contacts since I've been 16 years old, but probably since March, I've been wearing glasses. So this is me without the glare. So I thought I would share with you 10 ways that you know you are a homeschool mom. We are not all the same homeschool moms. In fact, there's a tsunami wave of homeschool families that have become homeschoolers this year, and we are all very different, and I know that. But I also know that there is some commonality, and some people might find what I'm about to tell you kind of familiar. You know you're a homeschool mom when you go on a trip away from the kiddos and always return home with pencils and books because you're keeping it educational. You know you're a homeschool mom when you insist that you all sit outside in winter jackets or parkas on frozen logs so you can sit in the great outdoors with your math workbooks in the middle of February. You know you're a homeschool mom when you're listening to the news and it begins in a half-an-hour current events discussion in your family and then a history lesson, of course. You know you're a homeschool mom when your kids know to bring their history reading on the half-hour drive to extracurricular activities, and the historical context will be discussed before they are out of the minivan. You know you're a homeschool mom when your kids' birthday parties include full families. You know you're a homeschool mom when your 14-year-old can independently do the week grocery shopping, even paying for it, because she also happens to know your PIN code. You know you're a homeschool mom when you get your kiddo to write a resume and cover letter at age 14, never too young for a part-time job. You know you're a homeschool mom when the 12-year-old has started her catalog or catering business and invoiced her very first customer, learning about capital costs because she purchased a giant coffee maker that you had to front, and she also has learned loan interest. You know you're a homeschool mom when your 9-year-old makes her own sleepover breakfast for her friends, pancakes and sausages with fruit salad. And last but not least, you know you're a homeschool mom when your non-homeschooling friends expect you to arrive at their home en masse, all 6 of you, the industry average. And finally, you know you're a homeschool mom when you realize that you'll have 3 kids gone for most of a summer week for whatever camps they're doing, and you think to yourself, how do I get that last child into a summer camp? Tell me, how do you know that you are a homeschool mom? Well, there is a tsunami wave of a variety of people that are entering the homeschool world. We were never homogenous, despite the impressions that people may have had. We were never the same. We all were very different. We had different family values. Even the ones that appear like they might have similar family values still think differently. And we all engage differently. We engage the education differently. We have different world values. We have different food on our table every evening. But we are all in this together in that we all want to do best by our families, to provide our children with the best education that we can give them, to learn how to do this family life, to reimagine maybe family life if this is all new to us. We are all in this together. I have been really excited to share today a podcast interview that I had this last week with Tamara Stryjak from the Neufeld Institute. She is the daughter of Gordon Neufeld, who wrote the book Hold On to Your Kids and a variety of other books, and it has had a huge impact on my own homeschool world. In fact, I write about him in my book, Homeschool Mama Self-Care, and how he's impacted me. A lot to look into, just even the content of that book. But Tamara Stryjak, his daughter, also has a book called Reclaiming Our Students. impactful. And her experience in homeschooling as a homeschool mom of two kids, and her experience with obviously her dad's content, it's a powerful combination for us to reimagine our family lives. So I encourage you to listen to the podcast Homeschool Mama Self-Care, episode 22. How I transitioned from homeschool to public school. Well, I'll tell you, I wanted to share with you that there are not only people that have many people, many families that have transitioned from public school to homeschool, but I'm in the middle of transitioning one of my kids from homeschool to public school. She has never before gone to school, not even kindergarten. And this is her very first year attending any class with a teacher. In fact, she suggests that her preschool teacher, which was really just a cubbies class, like a Bible scripture memory verse class back when she was 3, was her first teacher. But that's not how I thought of it. In fact, I don't even remember who it was that taught her at the time. I do remember her coming to a kindergarten class with me when I was volunteering for my second daughter, but that means that she only went to about 2 hours of kindergarten as a sibling in a volunteer scenario. That's it. And this year, she entered public high school, a brick and mortar high school. As a homeschooling mom, 15 years into this, there's 2 other kids that are older than her. This is a big adjustment. It requires a lot of trust. But I gotta say that I've learned a lot of what I've had to learn in transitioning my child from homeschool to high school with my oldest. Because as with many people's oldest kids, they are the ones that we learn the most from. That kiddo, I required to write an essay as to why she wanted to go into school, because I had my own homeschool mom identity crisis. I'm a homeschool mom. What are you talking about? You want to go to school? I'm doing this for your good. We have all the freedom. This is your best social opportunity. Your academics are yours to explore. You know, we're traveling. It's all great. We get to do whatever we want. You don't have to have your time prescribed. You don't have to sit in class and ask to go to, you know, the bathroom, or nowadays there's all sorts of extra expectations in classroom time. So first child around to enter public school, I required a lot more from, and it was much more, it was actually a battle in the beginning. And gradually I came to understand that it shouldn't be a battle, because it wasn't about me. It was about that child having had homeschooled for, I think she homeschooled for 8 or 9 years. She was ready to have her next new adventure. And it was outside the 4 walls of my home, and it was outside my perspective or my view on the world. And that right there is hard. That right there is every family's experience, every parent's experience. When they're connected to their kids and they want to do best by their kids, they have a hard time letting them become their own person, because our person gets in the way, and where our prescribed notions of what this is supposed to look like, childhood's supposed to look like, or the parent-child relationship is supposed to look like, gets challenged. I learned that my child is separate from me, and that my identity and her identity are not the same. So I might identify as a homeschool mom, which I am, and at core have very strong homeschool proclivities, or like tendencies, beliefs. And yet it isn't about me, and it isn't about homeschooling. It isn't about my identity, but it is most definitely about allowing and enabling a child to go do their thing. And so that child helped me learn to let my third daughter experience the same thing a lot more simply and easily. Because now I can say, yeah, I'll take you to the bus, or ask my other daughter to bring her to the bus. But she can go to the bus in the morning. She can, get a key, which I had to cut, so she could come into the house at the hours that she would come in and that I wasn't necessarily here for. I'd have to buy some new storage containers for her food at lunch. I would have to mentally prep to get emails from the school and suggestions about things that I wasn't accustomed to getting suggestions about, like how to handle COVID and Halloween or things like that, that just I've always assumed was not something I would need to hear from a school. So there's all sorts of things that happen, but there's also benefits. She's in a foods class for 5 weeks. The way the school is structured right now is that she has 5 weeks of one class with a cohort of kids, and then they move to another class, something like that. I think they're still trying to figure it out themselves. And this is the year my child goes to school. Okay, so she's in a foods class, and if you've been around homeschooling long enough, that a homeschool child that is entering grade 10 or a first year high school year knows a lot about cooking. She's pretty comfortable, but she is happy to learn from someone else and to get an outside experience outside of a home, outside of my home, outside of my perspective, my vision, or my view of the world. And so she's getting that in school. And so that's the part of the trust I was talking about before, that there is an awareness, or I have an awareness, that she needs to grow and do her own thing. So funny enough, by the end of her very first day, I had asked her, so how was your day? And she said, kind of bland. I was surprised that she told me that. But by the end of the second week, she said to me, Mom, would you be okay if I did like a foreign exchange to France next year? So apparently it wasn't adventurous enough. We'll see about that, right? Who knows what's going to happen next year. So that has been our present transition, my transition from public school to high school. I want to share with you that even though homeschooling, typical homeschool year has begun, and people are well underway in however they're engaging their homeschools, I have my own course from Teachable, How to Homeschool 101, which really should be more aptly titled The Transition from Public School to Homeschool and How to Do It. And the goal is to help you get clarity, confidence, and vision. So if you're looking to learn what your role in your kids' education could be, to learn about homeschool philosophies and how to take from those philosophies what your family actually needs and create your own approach, to learn how to create a useful homeschool environment, to recognize, honor, and encourage your child's learning approaches and interests, to learn how to become a learning consultant or a facilitator and not a teacher, learn about motivating kids or not, as it may be, recognizing what to do with bored kids, learn how to engage more than one child in your homeschool, and be sane. Learn the value of deschooling. If you've been around for a few months, I'll bet there has been a more seasoned homeschool parent, that has encouraged you to deschool, but what the heck is deschool? I'll talk about that. I'll help you learn how to choose curriculum for your child or your children. I'll help you learn how to see learning opportunities instead of school subjects. I'll help you learn how to create a unique homeschool routine just for your family, your values, your goals. Learn how to create unique family traditions that maybe enable play in your homeschool days and include special days and special traditions. I'll help you to learn to prepare for those days, the ones that a lot of people don't want to talk about or want to acknowledge. That homeschooling does have a whole lot of freedom, but it also some days brings mama to their knees. The challenging days, or sometimes just the unpleasantries of homeschooling. And I'll infuse you with confidence that the homeschool freedoms and comforts and joys are your ordinary miracles in this homeschool world. So if you're interested in a course that is looking or is really there to help infuse you with confidence and clarity and vision for your family, then head over to either my Facebook page, Homeschool Mama Self-Care, At the very top, I've pinned the link for that course, or you can probably look down below and I'll have it there as well. One last thing. My goal in this is to help build confidence and courage for you to do this homeschool thing, because no matter where you're at, if this is a new transition from public school to homeschool, or if it is you've been around for a little while but you need a little bit more confidence, I can do that for you. Probably because I really believe that you can do this thing. Been there, done that. So recently I've joined a group called Homeschool Mamas That Drink Wine. So funny. I know the administrator of the group, and she said that group grew to 800 overnight, which is very telling to me. Apparently we drink wine. And I know that not everyone does, because when I had an editor check my book, Homeschool Mama Self-Care, she said, you know, everyone doesn't drink coffee and wine. And I said, what? Of course they do. No, I know they don't. But if you are a homeschool mama wine drinker, I'm going to encourage you to head over to that site, because I recently got the idea that we should have a wine critique night along with a book club, and might be perfectly timed to do it online this winter, because we might be inside a little bit more. Okay, so I wanted to share with you a book that I've been reading. So this is my book room review. I am almost halfway through this book, and I must tell you that though I was introduced to the author, Judy Arnell, a number of years ago, even I think close to the beginning of my homeschool years, I think I watched her or saw her in an Alberta conference, homeschool conference. And this is the second book that I've read from her. So clever. She just understands, because she has been there, done that. She has a family of 5 kids, and I think she has one that's still at home, 14, if I'm saying that right. So I'm going to show you a family, but this is my bookmark. This is actually a picture of me with my kids a few years ago. Hannah, Madeline, Rachel, and Zachary, and we're all in our front yard. Well, there are so many things that I underline in this book, because it's just got so much content. It's just convincing you, enabling you to believe that you can do this thing, but it definitely is challenging my perspective on homeschooling, because we're talking unschooling. And though I know some people would suggest that I'm an unschooler, I don't think a radical unschooler would agree. So I think I'm probably somewhere on the spectrum. Having said that, every time I read something like this, or how children learn, or something about child development, it always helps me understand my kids better and to get out of the way more. So today she tackles a lot in this book, but the thing I want to share with you is her perspective on the socialization discussion, which, if you've been around long enough, you'll realize is something you will have to address for eternity. And if you've only been around for a little while, you might actually be wondering if any of this is truly a concern, which, by the way, I was one of those people. I also wondered about socialization. And anyway, I'll just let her answer that. She says socialization is better learned in home and community rather than in an institution. But she's really asking, what is socialization anyways? What's the point of it? Is it just so that you can mix with another 25 kids the same age that you are? Not much conversation, listening, or caring comments go on in a room full of school-age children with few or no adults. Let's look at where social tools are learned. Manners are first learned at home as toddlers, hopefully. Sharing allows others the use of one's possessions, space, and resources. And if it's taught at home from a very young age and continues throughout childhood, that's a great place to learn it, at home. Teamwork, negotiating with a group, taking turns and working toward a common goal can be taught within the family through activities, through homeschool groups, projects, and even video gaming. Kindness is shown by empathizing with friends, offering help, volunteering. In fact, through almost every activity in which we interact together. Everyday philanthropy, she says, so that we can teach our kids to be ethical citizens. Unschooling allows children plenty of time to shovel their neighbors' walks, mow their lawns, walk their dogs, run errands, volunteer at places like food banks and homeless shelters. Conversation and discussion are skills best practiced out and about in public. And our kids, homeschooled kids, get a lot of time in public. Maybe less so right now, but that's unique to this year. Play dates and entertaining visitors are great opportunities for kids to hear and learn the conventions of adult conversations. And let's not forget dinner talk, actually learning how to have a living classroom to teach socialization. About good sportsmanship, about learning how to win without gloating, how to lose graciously, remain optimistic and upbeat. It's a difficult skill to learn, an invaluable one to possess. Any kind of competitive activity can teach that skill. Cooperation and collaboration, helping out or hanging out with a group or team is a staple in many school curriculums and can also be learned at home through sports, field trips, home chores, activities, video gaming, volunteering, traveling. Simply living in a big family demands cooperation on a daily basis. Don't we know it? And problem solving employs empathy, conflict resolution, the fine art of negotiating, finding solutions, and that is best learned through relationships built in families where people are expecting to stay together for a long time. A study by a Canadian homeschooling group found that 67% of homeschooled adult respondents said they were very happy with their child's socialization, as opposed to the general population's 43%, which is a very large difference. And she says, and I love to hear this as a conclusion, personally, I think the peer culture of school is the worst type of socialization. The person best able to teach a 15-year-old boy how to be a man is not another 15-year-old boy. It is an adult man. Well said, Judy. Beautiful. So got to encourage that book, right? Unschooling to University by Judy Arnell. Okay, so our goal for today is to discuss how homeschoolers can handle overwhelm. And last week, we just got started on the potential topics that might overwhelm a homeschool mom. So many reasons. I would love to hear your particular thoughts. What things are you grappling with right now? Is it overwhelm? And if it is overwhelm, what's overwhelming? I'd love to hear that detail. We are all very different. We all have really different family environments. So I don't want to assume that I know exactly what it is that's overwhelming. So handling overwhelm, take 2. When we start homeschooling, we have this perspective that we just have to get the right curriculum for our kids that will actually satisfy all the expectations of what kids are doing at that age and what people are in the local area doing for that age. And we also are trying very hard to make sure that our kids are, they've got a routine that is going to work, that they're going to actually be able to get all that curriculum done in a day. And we definitely want to include all the school subjects, right? But where to find that perfect curriculum? Go to used bookstores, go to the library, go online to curriculum vendors, which are replete. There's much curriculum beyond Amazon. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that at all. You can get some incredible resources, find out about incredible resources through homeschool blogs or homeschool resource centers, homeschool threads on Facebook. Asking real people that have homeschooled, they'll be able to tell you a little bit more about curriculum. And the sky's the limit. There is no resource that you can't use to help educate a human being. However, if you are looking for the perfect curriculum, you won't find it because it doesn't exist. When once you thought this particular curriculum would be ideal, or these books are perfect, this Dear Canada series that my oldest daughter loved, and she loved reading all sorts of history books. That was a light series that she just, she ate up when she was about 11, maybe 10. And she read a lot about different experiences of Canadian girls at different points in history in a journal style, and she loved it. And I thought, this is amazing. This is such a great way to learn about Canadian history. And it is, except that not every child likes the format of reading a diary. Not everybody likes reading in order to learn. Not everybody actually wants to learn about Canadian history. But in my household, it's an inevitability because my husband loves it. So whatever the case, the format, the way that you're going to provide knowledge can come in many different forms, and finding the perfect curriculum, even if it's a perfect curriculum for one child, you won't find that it's a perfect curriculum for the next children. Or it might be, but it might be something else that would work even better. So don't be overwhelmed by the idea of finding the perfect curriculum, because you just won't. You'll just keep using different things. Sometimes that curriculum is teaching you so that you know how to teach a child to read, that you actually understand a little bit about whole word reading, or that kids do different reading outside of phonics reading, or maybe understand the phonemes, or is that diphthongs, or the different aspects of phonics that will actually help you teach a child to sound out blended letters that actually don't really intuitively make sense, because if you look at our words, they don't always make sense. And when you say, you pronounce a PH with a F, sometimes you pronounce PH with a P and Y, and there's sometimes a great reason, and sometimes there isn't. And sometimes there's exceptions, and sometimes there are a lot of exceptions. And so sometimes the curriculum that we buy or that we use can be useful to teach us how to engage the curriculum for our kids, or to engage learning opportunities for our kids. But no perfect curriculum exists. I have a lot of it, I know. You can't decide on a homeschool philosophy. This is why I was saying that in my course, How to Homeschool 101, I discussed the different philosophies, because those different philosophies all have value. Different people's perspectives all have value. I love that. I think traveling has taught me that the most. That I've been in enough part of the world, or different parts of the world, that really don't think like how I was taught growing up, or how I experienced life as an adult. They think very differently than my experience. And so listening to them and understanding why they came to believe what they believed helped me understand that there isn't just one way to approach learning. There isn't one way to approach homeschooling. There isn't one right way to approach each child. But all of those philosophies and all of those perspectives do inform my overall experience of homeschooling and how I'm engaging. So it's actually useful to explore all those different areas, but not to plan to decide on a homeschool philosophy. And if you want to, go crazy, do that. I have that story too. I have literally been all of the different homeschool philosophies, except, I don't know, what have I not been? I've been a classical homeschooler, definitely eclectic, definitely unschooled, Montessori because I've been very hands-on. I guess Waldorf because I tried to teach my kids to sew masks. Okay, fine. It was definitely not Waldorf. I cannot sew. And yes, I know there's more to Waldorf than sewing. But I would say that all of these different philosophies very much inform our global sense of how to engage our homeschools, or how to engage our kids, and how we want to approach learning, how we want to choose different things, how we, where we choose to do our homeschooling, if it's inside or outside, or how long we plan to do everything, or how detailed we are, if we're doing narration, or There's so many different ideas from all these different philosophies, and they're actually all fabulous. And also, you can't do them all because you just can't. You just don't have the time or the emotional ability, or probably the mental ability to do all of it. So just don't. Just go with it. Just keep learning what you need to learn so you can help your kids learn as facilitators. You've got more plans than time. We all do. Most of us do. Every once in a while, there's like a really super relaxed, casual, unschool family that just really has got it locked in. They know how to engage their kids and provide learning opportunities, but they're relaxed and they have their own thing. They got it figured. And those are few and far between, but yay you, that's awesome that you've got that figured. Most of us have more plans than time. We start planning somewhere in the end of the last year, so maybe in April, May, June, for my part of the world. And then we spend a couple of months reading, and we spend a couple of months looking through curriculum offerings and learning online what other people are doing, or maybe we look into the local, provincial, or state expectations for learning outcomes in that year, which I don't recommend, but I do know a lot of people do that. Even the schools don't fulfill it all, by the way. But there are so many different ways to find plans or to create ideas for a homeschool. And I actually think you should write it down. Write all your ideas down, because it just trains you to think in learning opportunities. And then you let it go. In the actual day where you were intending, on a bright and fresh Tuesday morning after the Thanksgiving weekend, when you have planned A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but instead your child is actually kind of antsy and doesn't really want to get into formal routine for the day. So instead, what he wants to do is hang out with his sister as she's doing biology labs for high school level microscope class. And you can see that since he's in grade 7, he's probably not going to get that level of content anytime soon, because I know that he's not going to want to. But if his older sister is like, hey, do you want to see what this looks like under a microscope? He's like, yeah, and cool. And then I roll with it and I ignore the A, B, C, D, E, F, G things that are so important because they're my plans. Then actually he's learning and he's absorbing and he's actually interested. So I gotta learn to roll with things rather than fix myself to the plan. You've got more plans than kids interested in your plans. That kind of goes along with what I just said. Oh, I actually want to do all those plans. I'm not a teacher by at a base. I'm a writer and I'm an encourager, not a teacher, really, even though it sounds like I'm teaching right now, but that's not really my goal. But I'm not really a teacher. Like, I'm not a homeschool mom teacher the way some people identify. But sometimes I think, oh, but all these cool things that I see these new homeschool moms doing with their kids on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I can't believe they're doing a whole unit study on pumpkins. Or, look at the effort that she put into, cutting out laminates of 3-letter words and then drew pictures on each of those letters so that it would remind the child that F stands for frog. And I'm like, that's so beautiful and that's so cool, and maybe I should have another child to do it. No, I'm not going to do that. Nope. We have so many plans, and that is cool and that is fun, but I can guarantee you that when they're 12 in grade 7, they're done doing pumpkin unit studies, or at least mine is. My kiddo is wanting to make his own games. He's, like I told you last week, he was making a ghillie suit for his birthday laser tag party, which I think is so clever. The last kid in our home that I thought would ever do anything with textiles. He's always doing something. He's always doing something quite creative, very logical minded. But as soon as I insert my scripted plan in it, he's a little less interested. Unless he's already on board for something, he's not nearly as interested as I am. So we have to expect that sometimes our plans might not be our kids' plans. Want to get overwhelmed? Try to enact all of those plans with more than one child or a few kids, especially if there's anyone under the age of 5 in your home, or anybody that's over the age of 13, anyone that's trending towards an emerging, individuating self, a teenager. That's a lot. When you have a few and you've got a lot of plans, it's a lot. That's a great way to get overwhelmed. You don't get time alone. That's a great way to get overwhelmed. And I think it is one of the challenges as a homeschool mom that there's no doubt we will always find a challenge with, unless we have a really solid base of family around us, which not everyone does anymore. But if you do, then maybe I'm not speaking your language right now, but it's still, there's something inside of us as homeschool moms that says we want to do this thing right. And so we want to do everything for our kids and provide everything for them and do all the motherly nurturing roles. And usually means that we don't get any time alone. And time alone is not in the grocery store. And time alone is not in the bathroom when the door's shut. And time alone is not sitting in your car waiting for your kids at their extracurriculars. Except that all of those things are actually time alone. And I know, and I'm not criticizing those times alone. I totally have used those times alone. But I mean time alone where you're truly separate, that someone else is responsible for your kids and you get to do your own thing. And it doesn't have to be fancy, and it doesn't have to be scripted, and it doesn't have to be some amazing, you're going to write a book thing. Yes, I have done that. But it's not that. It's just puttering. It's just being separate. It's having thinking time that's separate from your kids, that you're not feeling pulled by demands or emotional energy from different kids. You need time alone. And you get too much time alone. Just kidding. Okay, next. You've got too much noise that you might have too much of. I've talked to moms that don't identify with this. So if that's you, then just, zoom past this aspect. But I've heard this more than a few times, that moms have a hard time getting quiet. And that is a challenge, especially when they're younger. But the key is to practice and teach those boundaries. If you need quiet, I encourage you to do pretty cliche homeschool routine activity is a quiet time in the afternoon. It could mean that we're all reading together with a read aloud or listening to an Audible offering, or it could mean that we all have to sit on our beds for half an hour, whatever time our kids actually can sit on the bed. And you go sit in your room quietly, separate from the kids, if there's any way for you to do that. Or put them in a crib in the next door and let them sit with board books if they'll stay. I've had kids that will, and I've had a kid that absolutely wouldn't. But if in any way you can get a little bit of quiet every day, or even practice trying to get that quiet every day, because the practice does build upon itself. And as time goes by, the kids expect that whatever you're expecting in the routine will happen most of the time, not all the time. No perfection there, but you'll be able to continually get more quiet as you expect a little bit more quiet at a certain time of the day, maybe after they've done all their studies in the morning, or after you've had time on the trampoline, or you've been running around the backyard and getting everybody tired out. Maybe that's the time where even creating screen time as your quiet time, there's the value in screen time, is to actually get some quiet for mom. You're never going to get it all done. What you think as it, like the stuff that you want to get done, might be very different from what I want to get done, but both of us aren't getting it all done. It's not a thing. It's not just families that have both parents working outside the home that don't get it all done. It's also us that are at home that are also not getting it all done. The process is the purpose, not the completion of all the activities. Which, like, if you think about it, like, what are you doing if everything is done? What's the goal at the end of that anyway? But sometimes there's just too much mess, and I'm with you there. In fact, someone recently said that I think you might be an Enneagram 1 because you're on the perfectionist side. And I appreciate and understand why she thought that, because she actually came to my house. It was a little while ago, but when she came to my house, I knew she was coming to my house with her family and her husband, and they were coming for dinner, and they brought wine, and I was cleaning the house before they came. Everything is pretty clean. And I was taught by someone that really knows how to clean the house. And so, yeah, my natural tendency is to be tidy and clean. And having said that, if I gave you a scan around this room right now, it's okay. It's better than it was in the summer, but it's not super clean. And I've actually learned to let it go for pure sanity. I actually tell myself or encourage myself to alter my expectations, because it will make me some sort of crazy if I decide that I have to be a homeschool mom of 4 kids, now 3, I guess, or 2, I suppose, if you're being official. But I have 3 kids at home, and I'm supposed to be a homeschool mom of 3 kids and have the sink cleaned out after every meal, or have all the floors swept at the same time. Make sure there's no fingerprints on the door, window, or nothing on the coffee table, or like, no, it's not happening. It's not happening. I wanted it to happen. And I recently learned that somebody else that graduated all her kids actually does have that now. And I'm like, great, that's great. I'm looking forward to that when that happens again, but it's not happening anytime soon. So I simply have to alter my expectations. Looks like I have to finish up here. Somebody is trying to say hello. I can't do this all right enough. Not only do I have to alter my expectations in my level of cleanliness, but I also have to alter my expectations of how perfect it's going to be. And don't worry, I actually think I'm an Enneagram 2, not 1. And I have tendencies maybe towards perfectionism, but I've learned the good old-fashioned hard way that I just can't make it all perfect, and I can't do it all right. I can't do anything all right. I can't be the perfect wife. I can't be the perfect mother. I can't be the perfect coach. I can't be the perfect cook. I can't be the perfect anything. It's not a thing, being perfect. So I'm altering that, and I'm trusting and aware that part of the point of life isn't about perfectionism anyways. It's about growth and learning. So it's okay. Growth and learning is always messy. My little kids are overwhelming our study time. Yep. That's how I started. In fact, I started with an 8-month-old baby sitting on my lap, a 3-year-old little girl, super cute, lots of energy. She's got a YouTube channel now for a reason. Lots of energy. In fact, I'll show you a picture of her lining up when she was, I think it was a Sunday school performance at one point. This is my little girl in the white and black. Do you see her? Can you kind of see that? Okay, her eyes look demonic. I think our little brother poked her eyes out with this pin. Anyways, she's super excited to go on stage. Someone asked her at that age, "Are you nervous?" And I assumed she was nervous. And the piano teacher had said to her, "It's okay. When I get really nervous, I don't know, hum a tune," or she said something. And then when I came out of the piano class, my little girl said to me, "Mom, are you nervous?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Because I'm not nervous. I'm excited." Okay. All right. All right. Well, that little girl, lots of energy at 3, plus the 8-month-old. And I was trying to classically homeschool, or really public school or private school, my little kids in a very traditional, Susan Weisbauer, well-trained mind kind of way. Like my very academic kid now, my 17-year-old, was at that time the second daughter, who was, how old was she then? About 6. And I had 3 times in the day where I did read alouds. And one of those times we did a history read aloud with Sunlight curriculum, which is a lot in itself. It's overwhelming. It is a fabulous curriculum and it's very organized, but it was a lot to try and keep up with for 36 weeks. And every day we would follow it. And I did follow it for 2 years fully. And I made sure that everybody, my 8 and my 6-year-old, would narrate what they'd heard for that hour in a 2-page summary. I mean, they're 8 and 6. That right there that's a lot. And of course I was on the cursive for my 8-year-old, and I was really specific about the printing, and I had an 8-month-old and a 3-year-old. So I have experience in the trying to juggle. I have the experience in trying to be perfectionistic, and both of them are just recipes for unhappy making. And also the only thing I think they're really recipes for, if you can accomplish it, is for you to feel like you're doing it all right. Except, I'm going to tell you this, if you don't figure this out when they're little, you'll figure it out when they're older. They might reflect back to you that you have done all the right education for them and enforced a routine, except that they're quite unhappy. It is not happy making. There's nothing about that process that makes them happy, unless they're kids that actually really like that. But even my kid that is now the 17-year-old, that was the second born then, she still thought that was way too much, and she is naturally academic. So doing it all right isn't your goal. Making sure that all of the kids are doing studies, no matter how old they are, yikes, don't do that either. But definitely give them a basket. If they are a toddler age, give them a basket of activities that are intended just for them for that time. You can include any activities. It could be Play-Doh. It could be, like that, what is that, moon styrofoam stuff that even I like squishing it, and it goes into different forms. Or there was some sort of a sand too for a little while, or anything your kids aren't eating and they can be tactile about, or maybe they can use Play-Doh to build letters, or there's bajillions of ideas for preschool kids, but activities that go just into one basket for that special time in the day. And if you need to use screen time for that child, do it then. Or maybe the ideal time for any formal academics for a certain age that is doing academics and there's little kids around, you might want to just do that when they're having a nap time. Maybe you want to just give a child an activity to do if they're older and they can be somewhat independent, even if they're not doing it perfectly. Say they're not doing their math workbook perfectly. You could check back with them a couple times in the week, or have them come talk to you when they're having a challenge, because sometimes they're self-taught and they don't always need you to show them every single thing. In fact, I've seen that quite often, that even kids that don't have incredible math aptitudes, when they're homeschooled, they do pick things up very fast and can actually read instructions and figure things out on their own. I'm not saying to leave them to their own devices, but you could check back in with them a couple times a week or a few times a week, instead of assuming that you have to sit by them for every activity all the time. Because when you have more than a few kids, that's just, again, a recipe for crazy making. So your goal is to create learning opportunities and to come back to those kids and see where they're at and how they're engaging different things. Find activities for the younger kids. And if you have a really little baby, stick them in a high chair, lock them in, and give them activities, maybe a big bowl of water with some measuring cups. That'll be fun. Don't put it on a wood surface. Little kids can be overwhelming, and it can be a challenge to juggle. So try not to juggle. The less multitasking you can do, the better for your own state of mind. Are you trying to do everything with all the kids and it isn't working? Then don't do it. I know that sounds super simple for me to say that, except that is exactly what I had to do, is to stop doing it. And I've had a lot of pivots like that, a lot of pivots over the years. some people will say that they check every year to decide whether or not homeschooling is the right approach for their child. But I usually think of it even in a more detailed way. It is like, how are we approaching all the details of their education? How are we approaching their extracurriculars? Do they really need that many extracurriculars? Or do they really want to keep doing dance or curling? Or, you know, what is their favorite topic? What do they really love the most? Really watching and observing a specific child and trying to consider, what do they actually really need? Because you can't do everything all the time. Sometimes you even need to take a major break because something significant has happened in your life. And that might be COVID, but I think we're past the point of recognizing it, that something significant happened and we have to somehow create a new normal now. But for a million reasons besides COVID, there are many things that can cause us to feel like we just have to stop. And are we failing when we just stop? We really aren't. That's, again, why I would encourage you to read books like Judy Arnell's, or I have a Homeschool Mama reading list on my blog, Capturing the Charmed Life. And the purpose is to give you resources that will actually help expand your perception of what an education is anyway, so that you can grow an understanding about how your child learns, who your child is, and what an education really is, because then you're going to discover that you really don't need to do everything with all the kids. And if it's not working, you definitely want to stop. You want to pivot. You want to figure out what's going on. It might not be curriculum challenges. It might not be some major life event. It might just be that you need to instill more quiet, or you need to create different boundaries for all sorts of different reasons. You might need to have time in the day to exercise, to burn off tension. You might need, like so many possibilities. You might need to do something that doesn't make you feel bored. I got really bored with first language lessons. Susan Weisbauer's grammar book for grade 1 and grade 2, I think. But I really loved it. Like, this is an excellent book, I find, to teach kids basic grammatical concepts and to do it with poems and to recite back. Very simple approach, but after a number of kids, I just got bored of reading the preposition poem again. And then you have to change it up again. And then you say, okay, maybe we'll move into a more relaxed approach. Or maybe now that we've had enough relaxed time during the summer, we want to move more to a more formal approach. Just do whatever works, whatever feels the most satisfying for the most people for the longest period of time. And then when it doesn't, pivot again. Pivot, pivot, pivot. That's how it works. More times than not, overwhelm happens because our expectations are not realistic, or we don't have boundaries around us that make sure that other people know that I can't do everything. Both of those things need to be taught. So that was my presentation for homeschooling, handling homeschool overwhelm, take 2. And I'm going to remind you of a quote by Jill Churchill that I have had on a little card on my fridge that is right up there on my my poster board. And it says, and I bet you have heard this before, there is no way to be a perfect mother and a million ways to be a good one. That is the antidote for overwhelm. Last thing I wanted to share with you is a self-care strategy for the week. Tell me what you are doing to take care of yourself so you can take care of your kids this week. I'm going to share a couple that I've been doing, that I can share, that I've practically been doing, learning, putting into practice so that I can take care of me. The first one is something that I just mentioned that I said maybe you need to do it, but the truth is I need to do it. I'm going to just move away from the sun here a bit. How do I move away from the sun? I'm perfect time for the sun glaring on me. Okay, so the first thing I would suggest is getting on an elliptical or getting on an exercise machine or going outside and running hard or walking hard or swimming hard or doing something really hard for 10 minutes, maybe dancing to Spotify, but do something just to burn off the tension once a day. There is something physiologically scientific about increasing your endorphins, your hormones in your brain that actually makes you feel happier. And it also helps you release from that, you know, if you're having frustration or if you're overwhelmed, then it actually helps to release from that. So you want just 10 minutes, just 15 minutes. If that's all you can do, put your child in a playpen. Do they have playpens anymore? I maybe shouldn't say that. It's been a while since I've had a baby. Anyways, some sort of structure that is safe in the middle of a room, away from your giant elliptical machine or whatever you have. Get that aerobics video out. Oh no. Okay. I actually do have aerobics videos still. I'm clearly dating myself. Okay, so anyways, 10 minutes hard exercise just to increase your endorphins. Be flexible and focus on fun. I literally just said this in How to Handle Overwhelm. It must be subconscious because it's my experience too. There are so many times in the last, I don't know, 48 hours that I'm like, I gotta write that down. All these little moments, like I told you about, my son really just didn't wanna, yes, it was my son, in the last 2 days, that really didn't wanna sit down and do his normal study routine right after the long weekend. And I could see he was antsy. And if he had been my first daughter, I would have just said, sit down, be quiet, do the work. I will sit here until you finish it. Poor kid, hey? Anyways, this kiddo, I'm like, he's antsy. There's no way I'm getting him to do this work without a whole bunch of self-torture. So what am I gonna do? I am going to tell him, go outside, go burn it off, go do something else. What do you wanna do? And he's like, I want to work with Madeline to do these biology labs. I'm like, great. It's all about me identifying that there are learning opportunities right in front of him. Just because they are not the ones I prescribed, or they're not the ones that we originally planned, or he originally planned, which is the case, it doesn't mean it's not learning. So I need to be flexible and focus on the fun. And he did enjoy himself, and so did she, as she was showing me or explaining to me how to use the microscope and how to look at all these different leaf structures. And then it dawned on me that he was the only child out of our 4 that has not done a candy cell creation. Are you familiar with that? Pretty typical homeschool science stuff. You can find it anywhere online. Getting Jell-O and a variety of different candies that represent different structures of plant or animal cells. You Google that or throw that into Pinterest and you'll find all sorts of things. Actually, I have a Pinterest board as well, and I'm pretty sure I've got that in my science activities section. But it's fun. It's fun. And an 11-year-old boy does indeed want to eat candy. And if I say to my 17-year-old daughter, hey, will you show him what the different cell structures are, and he gets to place them in and he gets to eat them if he knows what they are at the end, he's in. He bought in. So what do you need to do to take care of you this week? I'm really excited that I've got a few, I've got feedback from my book this week, and it has been super encouraging. In fact, it's been really kind of cool to hear a couple of them say that it feels like I'm in their home, which I'm like, I got way too much to do. I'm not in your home. It's okay. There's no spy camera. I don't know how to work technology. I'm good. But the reason is because I've been there, done that. And what I wrote is what I know from personal experience. I came up with that much content about taking care of ourselves as homeschool moms because it's all practical and from my life. And so it was really lovely to hear that they could identify that it felt like I was speaking to them and that I was encouraging them as though I was sitting down for a cup of coffee with them, which is super cool, either a cup of coffee or a glass of Malbec, right? And the other thing is that there's 2 of them that referred to my book as a retreat, which was really cool because I actually started writing a course, almost finished writing a course called Homeschool Mama Retreat. And its intention is for homeschool moms that have been doing this for a little while, whether they're new or whether they've been here for a few years, but they're starting to feel like they either need a giant pivot or they need to change how they're thinking about their homeschools and what they need so that they can take care of their kids. So on that note, share your self-care strategies in the comments below. And join me next Wednesday at 2 p.m. PST on Zoom. You can get the link on my Facebook page Wednesday morning. Or you can check out that How to Homeschool 101 course that I told you about. That's also on my Facebook page, Homeschool Mama Self-Care. I hope that you and your children can have a charmed week. But since we all have our challenges, I hope that you can turn your challenges into your charms. Until next week, I'll see you soon.